Hello, everybody. Welcome again. It's another segment. It's been an exciting day, and we have someone very special. And I confused them with their sister. It turns out it's their sister, but it is the Chitigas, and they are known for their, not just their elegancy and beauty, but also for their brains. And this is the older sister of Elizabeth Chitiga that we know.
No, this is the younger sister of Elizabeth, but the older sister of Professor Margaret Chitiga.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. And you were an ambassador, and now you're, at PAMSEC.
Yes.
Maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, because you've got a very interesting history.
I have worked in government, in international organizations. I worked at the Commonwealth. I came back. I then worked at the UN in different capacities, and then I became an ambassador. I've worked mostly in policy development, in local economic development, working with civil society, working with marginalized groups, but also creating policies and policy frameworks that ensure that their issues are taken into account and that their voices are heard. I have done a lot of advocacy work on different issues, particularly gender equality is in my DNA, and so I have worked at different levels. I've worked at the very grassroots level, and I have worked at the top policy level. So I have the comfort of striding the different spheres of development.
You would have fooled me. I thought you were so young. I didn't know you had this wealth of experience. But you're the CEO of a new government ministry altogether. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, the Ministry of Skills, Audit and Development was created in September 2023, soon after the elections. And the motivation for creating this ministry by His Excellency the President was really to consolidate the skills development, architecture and landscape within the country to ensure that firstly, we were producing graduates that meet the needs of industry, that we were producing a workforce that can work for today and also for the future, and that we were ensuring that we don't have a country that is just totally academic focused, but that we create pathways for those with technical skills, for those with creative skills and others to create their enterprises, to shine, because we are very academic in this country.
Yeah. But
only 29% get 5 O-levels. So what happens to the 71%? And those are some of the questions I think that then motivated that we create a ministry and consolidate, harmonize the skills development, ensure that all the tiers of skills development are there, ensure that we don't lose our people into the diaspora, but even when we lose them, create linkages for skills transfer, for skills development, and use them, as the President said when he went to Seoul. He said, in fact, you help us to leapfrog the technological age. So how do we tap our diaspora for development of our own country, using the skills and the expertise that they have gained, which we might not have the privilege to? We also have the responsibility to look at the infrastructure for skills development. Our training centers equipped for today's industry? Our vocational and technical centers equipped for any industry? And so those are some of the questions we are asking and looking. So we work with many ministries, with higher and tertiary, with Ministry of Youth, with Ministry of Agriculture, and industry, because they are the client. Yeah.
You're asking extremely existential questions. And can you simplify for us what is happening with the 71% that fail O levels?
Apart from the technical and vocational training centers that the Ministry of Youth has, there is no other pathway for anyone without 5 O levels. You know, when you see any advert, they say 5 O levels.
Including English and math.
And math, yeah.
Yeah.
And we are also beginning to create the debate of, are these 5 O levels necessary? Remember the Zifa presidency issue.
Yes.
5 O levels even crept into football. But how do we, in fact, begin to honor and support and credit prior learning, comma with Mapo story, CSO skills development, where people don't necessarily have 5 O levels.
It doesn't mean that they're dumb.
Yeah, the people who are repairing our cars or who built your house, I don't think they had 5 O levels, but they were excellent and they were skilled. So how do we give credence and accredit those skills? How do we recognize such skills without forcing them to have 5 O levels? There are some people who are very technically oriented. And really, for a country to industrialize, you need the technicians. And so we need to invest in technical development.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how are you going about that? Because that's a huge task, right?
It is a huge task. And at the moment, my colleague in the Ministry of Transport said the rule in transport is that there should be 7 artisans to 1 engineer. The ratio is different. We have 7 engineers and 1 artisan. The artisans that we have trained have also left for greener pastures, but also we need to retool and invest more in our polytechnics, in our vocational and technical centers, so that they produce the technicians that you need for industrialization. We also need to bring in equipment that relates to what is in industry today. Some of our equipment is very dated, and we need to invest in that level of training and education. We need to retool and re-upskill the teachers. Some of them have not had any refresher, retraining to adapt to technologies and all, and we need to do that. So this is a lot of working around and with the different institutions to create policies that enable that, but also not just papers in terms of policy, to ensure that resources are allocated to technical training. At the moment, Zimbabweans love certificates, they love degrees, doctorates. Many of you may have 5 masters and all that. So we look down on people who have gone to technical colleges, but technical colleges are the future of this country, and we need to invest in them. So there's a lot of advocacy work that needs. Industry needs to tell us and say that they appreciate workers from polytechnics, because they are practical. They know what to do.
Yeah. I can give you direct feedback. Some of the work that we're involved in is people who go abroad, especially in South Africa, who are looking for jobs, and then the employers come back to us and they want us to just verify their skills level and their certificates. And what we've seen over the last 10 years, I can give you over the last 10 years, that 80% of those people is usually people with a vocational background, with a technical background, and they're coming from our polytechnics. And it doesn't matter which polytechnic. And that's South African economy that's absorbing a lot of these people. But then when I look at industry, when I look at Zimbabwe, we seem to be promoting the universities and not promoting the polytechnics. So what I did was I looked at Harare Polytechnic and I looked at graduates who are coming out, and it's less than 1,000. And yet when you look at the UZ, people who are graduating with a BA in English, not that I'm saying anything about the humanities, but I'm like...
Oh, you are, but anyway, carry on.
Were we not better off capacitating Harare Polytechnic?
It's a whole of society problem. This is not a government problem. this is parents want all their children to have degrees. Have you heard when mothers go to church, I want to thank God, all my children are graduates, they have degrees. And when a child goes to technical college, we don't really speak about them. Say, oh, comma, with all these derogatory words for technical education. We need more publicity for technical education. We need high-level policy endorsement of technical education. I've been talking to my colleague, the Secretary for Higher and Tertiary, and say, please get HE, the President, to come and to a graduation ceremony at a polytechnic. And then the parents will realize that, these polytechnics are good. And I think the work that they are now doing with the Ministry of Youth, with the youth vocational training centers, is beginning to change people's minds. And as the graduates now don't find jobs, people are beginning to question, but Zimbabweans will spend their last cent sending children to do a degree in a country they've never heard of, just for them to have a degree.
Yeah, which is irrelevant.
Yeah.
And I'm going to put you on the spot because it's something that came out. I don't know if it was coming from your ministry, but it was definitely made the news on skills level that we have, whether we have a lot of lawyers, and I think that's what it said. It said with too many lawyers, but we don't have enough. The skills shortage was around, I think, engineering, and there were all sorts of things that were put there. I want to hear your view on, do you think we're overskilled? Do you think that we're underskilled? And which areas do we need to work on besides the artisanal jobs that we've already spoken about?
In 2018, the Minister of Higher and Tertiary Education carried out a critical skills audit. And that critical skills audit showed that sectors where we have critical skills shortages were sectors related to STEM, in agriculture, engineering, mechanization, the different STEM areas, the engineers and all. And they also then realized that there were other areas where we oversupplied. And the supply side and the demand side don't seem to talk to each other well enough. How many lawyers can this market absorb? I am not sure we know. And do universities carry out tracer studies to know where their students have gone to, who has absorbed their students? Those are questions that they began to ask. And I think now they're introducing these tracer studies and all, so that they know. But we will carry out a skills audit, a comprehensive skills audit, that will enable us to know how many of each different skill we need for each sector in order for the sector to perform at a certain level. And once we have that, that gives some direction to technical training, to universities, in terms of which degrees or which disciplines are in demand. We can also look at ourselves as a hub for training for others. Our social workers have all gone to the UK. Why don't we just form an agreement with the UK and
formalize
train?
it?
Formalize it. And train social workers for them, so they pay for the social work.
Why don't we?
Why don't we? This is why you now have a ministry that is now
Okay, so is that something that you're actually working on?
Charged with this and looking at which markets are our people going to? Who wants our people? You know, in Australia, the artisans reported that they would they were told that if you bring people from your class, we give you a small bonus. Yes.
So philosophically, I think about this as a capital allocation problem or challenge, right? If it does turn out to be correct that we've got too many lawyers or too many accountants or too many of whatever skill and not enough of other skills like STEM, it's because there's a disconnect between the incentives to graduate in certain courses and the market's demand. And part of that disconnect, in my opinion, is that education is subsidized in such a way that doesn't penalize parents and students for making the wrong choices. So if you go to university and you get a qualification for which there is no demand in the market, you're not penalized, right? You don't get this big bill for spending 4 years studying something and getting a skill that the market isn't interested in, right?
But it's a cost to the taxpayer.
It's a cost to the taxpayer.
It's a cost to the parent.
And certain professions or courses come with this status and prestige. People get to, like Zia, get to call themselves lawyer. And there's a certain amount of prestige associated with having that skill, even though the market doesn't have a shortage of lawyers. Maybe we have a shortage of artisans and mechanics and people who can actually build things with their hands, who don't necessarily need 5 O-levels, but should go to a polytech and pick up a technical skill. So, to what extent do you guys think that the problem is the framework that the person who's allocating capital or resources to universities and politics is disconnected from the market that's actually consuming the skills?
I think the problem starts way down in terms of career planning. We need to create, and one of our mandates is to create a career planning framework. If you have 15 points in maths, biology, and chemistry, you're automatically a doctor. Even if you didn't want to be a doctor, there's a place for you. And if you have 15 points in the arts, you're a lawyer. Even if you didn't want it, So people just driven by it. So career guidance in this, in our system is offered at different levels, but it's not systematic. And we also have to look at what investment have we made in the primary education. Remember, as science starts from a lab in Form 1, how many schools in Zimbabwe do not have labs and are doing combined science? And therefore, you've ruled those out from STEM. So we need to invest at the ground level. The supply chain is longer than just starting at university. And I think that's where some of the challenges are and the bottlenecks that we have created and which we now need to see ways of clearing.
That's actually a very good point, that actually why we ended up having lots of lawyers is because, those were the subjects that were available to those kids in those particular schools.
They had 15 points.
But there's something that you say that I think it's very important, that we can become a hub for the world. Yes. Because, it breaks my heart when I see kids now with 20 points, not 15 points, with 20 points struggling to get into medicine because we only have a few places for medicine. But if we become a hub, there are kids who are talented, who clearly have got the talent and have got the 15 points. Why can't we train doctors for the rest of the world? Why can't we train engineers for the rest of the world?
I think it's one of the things that we need to strategically position ourselves. So we say, what do we want to be when we grow up? We could be a training hub for people. The National Railways is training for the region. And they continue to train for the region. And they are the reputable training place. If you have been trained at NRZ, there is a job for you in the region. And they said as far as Europe, there people are going. So in fact, we are good at training. There's a comparative advantage that we have that we need to harness and package into a product that we offer to the world.
Wow, fantastic. Okay, so we need to round up. So the last question that I have for you, what's a milestone for you in the next 5 years that you're like, this is what we set out to do and we've done it in the next 5 years?
My minister calls it a skills revolution. We would like to turn the Zimbabwean workforce into a skilled workforce, to be able to forecast what jobs are required now and plan for them, what jobs are required for the future and plan for them, to have a more skills rather than qualifications discussion. And because we are so qualification recruitment is this person is a first class, we want them. But what can a person actually do? I would like to see everyone trade tested. If you're a lawyer, can you develop an SI? If you can't, then you failed the trade test. Not just trade test technical people. For me, I would like to see a skilled workforce because we are good at work. Yeah.
All the best, and thank you very much for the work that you're doing and for coming back to Zimbabwe and actually contributing to skills development.
Thank you.
Yeah. Cheers. Pleasure to have you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Pleasure for me too.
Thank you. As much as we have, and we'll continue speaking to as many delegates as possible. Cheers.
Yeah.